Perfect.
Yep.
So it's now 7 o'clock. And so I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Health, virtual meeting of the Board of Health to order with a roll call vote.
Okay, Daryl Beardsley present.
Matt Beavers present.
Lisa present.
And I think that we've got at least some members with a 9 o'clock departure time. So what I'd love to do is I think we've got usual business, but some topics that may be more open-ended than close-ended. And so for regulatory review, I would favor saving that for our last agenda item, but also kind of planning to bound that a little bit. Any objections or concerns with that?
No, and I think Rebecca might be connecting now
Okay, perfect.
in case she wants to get announced as present.
Perfect.
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can indeed. And so Rebecca Honeywell is present, if you can state the same. Rebecca, we know you're you, but if you can identify you for the record.
This is Rebecca Honeywell, present.
Perfect. Thanks, Rebecca. So do I have a motion to add the 3 agenda items listed that were not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting? This includes the mobile food permit for Slow Dough Pizza Co., Chubb's Ice Cream, may be 2 of my favorite names for food permits, and the 21 to 23 South Main Street revision to a previously approved plan.
And could I add one more?
Sure.
A drought status update.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right, so I would move the addition of those 4 items to the agenda.
Seconded.
Perfect. All those in favor?
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. Maybe let's start with food permits. Perfect. And Ellen, any issues or concerns when Tom looked at these?
No, Tom has recommended approval of both of them. The second one, Chubb's Ice Cream, is the one that's the retroactive. They were here in August for the recreation department, and he just got he had agreed to submit all the information. He finally did.
Perfect. So do I have a motion to approve the food establishment permit for Chubb's Ice Cream?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none?
Yeah. Okay, Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. And do I have a motion to approve the food establishment permit application for Slow Dough Pizza Co.? And I will be honest, I am trying to say that name as many times as possible.
And this one
So
is,
moved.
just to let you know, this one is for an event that will be at Silverwood Farm on October 22nd.
Sounds good. So I hear a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. Hearing no further discussion.
Okay, Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
And Matt Vitale, aye. And then I think I saw Mark on here. Mark, are you available? We can talk briefly about the revision to the 21-23 South Main revision to a previously approved plan. I've got that up on the screen for you.
Yes, I am available, and thank you for bringing it up on the screen. We received a revision to a previously approved plan. The board does have copies of that plan as well. I think it was June 1st. what they need to do based on a discovery from the installer. And then he contacted the installer and I, is that the pipe that leaves the existing septic tank to the right of the existing building goes down the hill. And that pipe was discovered to be lower than what the engineer projected. So in that case, he was going to have to raise the pipe, and it may have come out of that slope that you see behind the building. It was going to be difficult, or he would have to raise the tanks. I think the engineer made a reasonable change here. One, the tanks will be more accessible from the other side of the leaching field. You'll see the septic tanks to the right versus the left. And he's bringing it, the sewer pipeline down the drive-through to a sewer manhole. And then from there, it goes the rest of the way down the drive-through towards the new building. And the new building will connect with the existing, well, with the proposed pipe at that, right where you are, at that sewer manhole. And that will all go to the new septic tank and then to the fast chamber. This proposal has been reviewed by the engineer and myself. I find it within all the requirements and recommend approval.
And I think one comment I would add is this one we're taking slightly out of our typical order. So conservation will be considering this tomorrow. Typically, we have conservation review and approve plans prior to our review. In this case, the existing condition with an open hole with kind of the impacts of that, I think, separate this in terms of a sort of reasonable adjustment to our normal workflow, given the state of the site and the urgency of progressing with the replacement.
And I agree. And I'm glad you brought that up, Matt. There's another plan that the board did receive today, and it's the plan that's going to be forwarded to the Conservation Commission showing the dewatering process, because this excavated hole for the new leaching facility, they took out the old leaching facility. So they're running on tight tanks right now, a tight tank. That area is a good size hole, about, I'd say 8 to 10 feet deep. And the base has groundwater in it, so it has to be done as quick as possible. So I would say, agree with you that this is an urgent matter that needs to be addressed as soon as possible.
Perfect. And then the only other two things that I would comment, which are unchanged in this plan, the existing design flow from the previous iteration was 650 gallons per day. Because this is fast food use, it requires 1,000 gallon per day. As currently designed, the updated design flow estimates are 370 gallons per day. When we approved the plan on June 1st, we included a condition making it conditional to a design flow of 650 gallons per day, above which the property owner would need to return to the Board of Health to discuss further, as we did on June 1st. I would favor continuing that as a condition for the approval of this plan, as well as conditional to Concom approval tomorrow prior to release. And I think there's a no garbage grinder restriction. And my recollection is in IA technology, is that right?
Yeah, it's the DEP notice of alternative technology deed recording. There's no garbage grinder deed recording.
Perfect. So do I have a motion with those conditions?
And if I may add, Matt, the IA technology is the FAST system that the engineer has proposed to help reduce any particulate matter and to help digest the waste from the restaurants. So it's a good plan. Nothing has changed except for the change to the piping and the tank locations. The rest of it is the same as the board reviewed back in June.
Perfect.
Okay. Then I move that we approve the plan subject to receipt of approval from Concom, the deed recording, and conditional to the design flow condition.
We already have received the deed recording.
Thank you, Ellen. I was just.
Oh, we
gonna
have,
say-
okay.
Perfect. So it'll be conditional to the Conservation Commission approval and the design flow limitations as described separately on June 1st.
So moved.
Correct.
Do I have a
Seconded.
Perfect. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. Perfect. With that, I guess we've got a couple of topics. I see Tom Trainer here, and I wonder if it makes sense to pull in the farm pond update and then transition to the drought update and then the variance hearing. Does that work for folks?
Yep.
Perfect. So I'm not totally sure who's doing the farm pond update. I know it's my my topic, but I missed the last meeting where this was discussed. So Daryl, I don't know if you want to comment on this, or Tom, I know you've been heavily involved as well, if there's any other comments to make.
Yeah, I'll let Tom do this,
What
if
would
that's
you
okay,
like?
Tom.
I didn't know this was coming up. What would you be interested in? The last time we went out and did any serious testing was 2 weeks ago, and the water clarity was still in the 1 meter range. But I haven't been out there in 2 weeks.
Okay, so a short update then. Does anyone have questions on that?
I don't think so. I imagine we'll see an improvement in clarity as the temperature gets colder, and I'm curious to see what next summer will hold.
Yeah, we can only hope. So do you want me to do the drought?
That sounds fabulous.
All right, so the drought update is very brief for the moment. We are still in stage 3, the severe critical. Now I forget which one is which. Help me out, Tom. I think it's severe.
I forget, it's a 3.
Yeah, it is 3. It's still 3. However, there is a meeting tomorrow of the Drought Management Task Force. So that's the main update I want to give, is we'll see if there is a change in designation. Although I want to just remind everyone that we have had rain, and certainly the streams and the pond and Charles River look fuller, but they fill up first. It doesn't, I think it takes a lot longer for groundwater to build back up again. So we're still not out of the drought status in terms of groundwater resources. Oh, and also there had been some confusion that things had changed, but there's both a state drought categorization and then designation by the Drought Management Task Force. And then there is a national system for tracking drought status. And unfortunately, the definitions and the numbering are just different. And the lines of where they draw the borders of the regions that are affected are different. So I think it might be a 2 on the national level, but again, it's a different system.
Yeah, we're on level 3, which is like critical but not emergency. So that's 4 is emergency, but we're not in that anymore. So we're in critical.
Okay, thank you.
And I can give you a local perspective. We're out doing soil testing, and where we normally would see water at this time of year, we were on Western Ave, for example, no water found 10 feet down. So the rain we're getting is not putting a dent into the groundwater in some areas that are normally found very wet.
And I think that speaks to kind of previous assessments we've had where folks are wondering, hey, we didn't find water in the hole. Why are you using models? And I think some of that variation in the setting of kind of more exceptional weather events speaks to that logic.
And for Jeannie, who's on, so after the meeting tomorrow at the state level, we should have an update, and then we can send you some information for the website.
Great, thank you.
And then it looks like we've got 17 minutes before our scheduled variance hearing. And so I thought I saw Sean on here, and I thought in that case, it may make sense to talk about the beaver permit, because I suspect that's what Sean's here for. So Mark, I'm going to pull it up. Do you want to
Yep.
just sort of introduce the background and then?
Sure. And I spoke to Sean last week and to Jeannie Guthrie. I think they're both on tonight. And I went to the location that I thought was the typical issue, which is down Goulding East after the railroad tracks where the culvert is in the road. And there is a difference in level there too. So, but Sean noted to me, no, it's right on 27 South Main Street, which I went back and looked at, and indeed that's clogged as well. So I did recommend that, that be approved. to prevent flooding, but also recommended routine maintenance, because that whole area of the East Goulding, West Goulding, South Main Street area is, I'm sure, a perfect location for beavers to congregate and cause damage to the culverts and so forth. But I am recommending this request for the beaver permit due to the culvert blockage.
So and then I guess I just wanted to ask what the timeline is, because I had mentioned to Sean that, well, I forget when we had a discussion about this months ago, though, quite a while, about taking the next beaver issue opportunity to look into the flow leveling devices as a more enduring solution to the problem, so that the water just continues to move without pulling out dams repeatedly and trapping beavers. So I did reach out to the Central Mass Mosquito Control Program, because they do offer assistance with that. And I had not heard back. I contacted them last week after the permit request came in, and I sent a reminder to them today, but still haven't heard. So I just don't know what your timing is and whether there's any leeway, because it takes some time maybe to set up whatever you would be doing. Like, should we wait and see if they're willing to jump in and help out on this?
Well, we can't, you're not allowed to do anything without trapping a beaver first. We can't go in there with the beaver in there. That particular culvert's only a 3-foot diameter culvert. So even though it's significantly blocked, and what you can't see is the dam. That one's actually in the pipe. It's not in front of the pipe, it's in it. And there is a fence around it, which is also submerged. So it probably could have been taller, and we will do that. But for some reason, that culvert, they sometimes will go up the pipe, which is pretty rare. Oftentimes they also go up over the road and get hit by cars, which is helpful. So this particular permit is just a trap. I think we've already been told, and of course we'll confirm. I don't think we can do a pond level over there, because the deepest water there is right in front of the pipe, and by design it shouldn't even be 2 feet deep. And for some reason the pond levelers need 3 feet of water for them to be effective.
Oh,
I'm not sure exactly why. I'm eager to.
well, you can go far out from the pipe, but it does depend. It has to be somewhat low, but going through the pipe, it doesn't have to be deep at all. Because I put it right over.
I think where the bend is, and further out from the pipe, is actually less deep. In this instance, the ones that work good, like over on Woodland Street, that's deep water out away from that culvert. So that one works. That one's pretty effective.
So it sounds like the next step for this will be Daryl will follow up when we hear from the state and connect with Sean to see if this may not help with the West Goulding, South Main culvert, given its size and properties, but it may be a solution for some other areas that we can consider that are kind of frequent areas of problem.
Right, and it may very well help here too, but I know that we need to trap first anyway. We can't have that adult beaver in there.
John, do you know if it's more than one beaver?
No, but I saw him. I stopped by at about 6:10 a.m. the other day. It was still pretty dark, so I shined my light down and he went swimming out of there. He's huge.
Yeah, I expect you're probably going to have more than one down there.
I expect so as well. If not, they're downstream where you saw the other evidence, and it was the one further down East Goulding that we last talked about, that we were going to try to get them out there to look at. So hopefully we can do that before it gets much worse.
Very good. And Sean, just when you're done with this portion, if you do need to breach or you do need to decide on some effective measures such as water lowering control devices, just make sure at that point you would go through us and conservation.
Yeah.
Also, I'll just mention that when I worked on one of these flow leveling device projects. And it was with a firm that does, I don't know if they do the majority of these projects in Massachusetts, but they do quite a few. There was no need to remove the beavers first because they didn't stick around and they didn't interfere with the process of installing it. So it may not be necessary, just a point of information.
I don't think it's legal to work on an active dam with a beaver in there. We're not allowed to breach them until we trap.
That might be a lodge versus a dam. There's no way something in a culvert is a lodge.
I will definitely add the lodge versus dam breaching as things I didn't learn in medical school. In terms of
But we can
follow-up,
find that out later. We
I-
don't
I-
have to decide that tonight.
so maybe
Right.
we can follow that up offline, but I will say that beaver permits are my favorite part of contemplating the wide-ranging duties and services of the Board of Health.
Right.
So Sean, anything else you need from us or any other discussion on this specific one? It sounds like we've got some good next steps for follow-up.
Yeah, the only thing I need actually is there was market dated that on last Friday. It's only a 10-day permit. We didn't realize that. I didn't realize that, and the trapper didn't. So we were going to ask if we could actually make it effective today. Otherwise, the 10-day permit is half gone already.
I don't see a problem with that, and we can update the permit.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve to ratify the previously approved beaver permit with a revised date of effective today?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion?
Just that at some point, I'd love to find some more harmony with these animals who can hold water for us and in a way that we might need it in the future, especially with droughts.
I'm there with you. I don't really enjoy doing this.
yeah,
Especially when you describe the size, it's just sad to eliminate a senior member of our community.
Right.
Fair enough. Hearing no further discussion, Daryl, you
Oh,
want to start us off?
Daryl, but less
Happy to.
enthusiastically than usual, so.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, nay.
Vitaly, aye. Thanks so much, Sean.
Thanks. I'm going to stick around and listen to a couple of the other items.
Sounds perfect. Alan, do you want to give us updates on the thinking of things that have happened on the 9/29 and 10/3 flu clinics?
Yeah, we held two very small flu clinics. This year I only purchased 50 doses because last year we wasted many doses. It appears that people are going to pharmacies much more often. But on last Thursday, the 29th of September, we had one flu clinic, a second one just on Monday, October 3rd. We've vaccinated a total of 39 people. So I do have 11 doses remaining. I have one remaining high dose for seniors and 10 remaining regular flu vaccine doses. And the nurse, Michelle Koval, did agree to come back another time if we do get 11 people who might want to get flu shots. But they went very well. We had them right in the Board of Health office. And it was, everyone that did get a shot was very happy.
Sounds good. Thank you for all your work on that, Alan. In looking at the things we can sort of tackle in 6 minutes before our 7:30, I thought that we could at least briefly discuss the Climate Resilience Working Group and the nomination of a board member. I'm happy to share what Dorothea shared with me, but Daryl, I don't know if you know more about it and want to sort of introduce the subject.
No, go ahead.
So Dorothea reached out and there is a state grant to develop a climate action resilience plan. And they're looking for a member of the Board of Health to join the newly formed Climate Resilience Working Group. The role of this group is to act as an advisory group in the development and implementation of Sherborn's Climate Action and Resilience Plan. And so I think that this would include attending and actively participating in 3 workshops over the course of the next year, tentatively planned for December, February, April. Meetings will be approximately 2 hours, periodically reviewing and providing feedback on goals, action items, and implementation strategies in between meetings, and helping be a champion for this plan by learning about climate action and promoting and supporting the plan through the planning process and implementation. And I think the intent is to work closely both with the town, community stakeholders. There's a consultant that's been retained to help work on this, as well as to collaborate as applicable with other boards or committees. Is this something that feels particularly appealing to anybody, that they would be enthusiastic about sort of adding to their plate?
I wouldn't mind doing that.
Sounds lovely.
I'm sorry?
No, I said sounds lovely.
Oh.
So if no one else has a burning desire for avoiding burning temperatures, I'd like to nominate Rebecca for participation in the Climate Resilience Working Group.
Dorothy, yes.
And Sean, you're perfect. Do we need to vote on it?
Yes, you probably should.
Perfect. So do I have a motion to nominate Rebecca to be the Board of Health representative to the Climate Resilience Working Group?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Okay, Daryl, I.
Oops. Lisa, I.
Do I need to abstain?
No, you're allowed to vote for yourself.
Sure. Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Rebecca, thank you so much for your service on this important issue.
Welcome.
I keep getting smaller and smaller chunks of time, and I'm like, I think we can get something. So we've got the ZBA petitions for hearings on 10/19. Ellen, do you have? I'll pull that up, but do you have any comments on those? I think
some of them are pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know, the heritage, the Weiss operations, the renewal for the Carrerios. And I also think Hardeman is new. Is that's not a, oh, it is a renewal. Okay. So as long as nothing about their businesses is changing. Oh,
Yeah.
and then petition
Steve
to sell,
Constant.
that one's new. It's the Icoloya, yeah, oh boy, I can't do that without massacring that name. So the -17.
And I think that one will have no on-site repairs, no visible signage, no on-site vehicle work, and sort of on driveway parking. So
Right. So as long as the other things aren't expanding or changing in a way, or if they are going to, just that they're advised that they need to come talk to us if it falls into water or sewage management or that kind of thing. So, all right. And then.
And I looked at that application, nothing stood out to me as creating issues in that regard. And then I think Steve Constantine's is the request that we made for the transfer in order to allow the septic system to be placed on the property, not on an easement.
Yes, and that one, I think, you know, I'd want to relay to them that this change will have bearing on septic issues for us, and therefore, I don't know if, let's see, it's October 19th, Wednesday.
It overlaps with us. I was going to see if I could attend, because again, I think it's one that's helpful for the concerns that we had, and would certainly hope that we'd see them grant.
Okay. Although I think, is that the way that this goes? in a way that makes it easy for us. I thought that this change was actually going to move it farther away, but maybe I need to reread those details. It's going to take the, make it a need again, I think, for the easement. I don't know. Steve, can you remind us?
This is Dan McIntyre.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
Basically, what we're requesting from the ZBA is exactly what the Board of Health approved, putting the
Oh, okay, great.
putting the septic system on actually ownership and fee of number 30. So there'll be no easements.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Then I
So-
guess we should express some enthusiastic support for that to the ZBA.
Sounds fabulous. Daryl, are you able to do that, or would you like me to do it? I'm happy either way.
I'll work with Ellen on that.
Sounds great. Perfect. Well, we've timed it well. So we are now at 7:30. And we have the variance hearing scheduled for 49 Farm Road septic replacement plan number 22-59. And Ellen, do we have all the green cards?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. There's been some back and forth. So Dan, maybe you can sort of start us off, because I think there've been a couple of different scenarios contemplated. And depending on how that unfolds, will probably drive what we're able to do tonight and not able to do tonight.
Sure, if I could give a quick little introduction, then I'd like to turn it over to Brian Moore, the homeowner, to kind of get into the more details. But we submitted a 3-bedroom design for approval, which is the current application. But we want to have a discussion on the design criteria before that's really finalized. We want to make sure that we're designing it for what's actually out there. If we look at the record as a whole, we look at the floor plans, past Title V inspection reports, even the meeting minutes from 2007 Board of Health meeting, they all seem to point to a 4-bedroom home. The only piece of information in the record which prompted the 2007 deed recording for a 3-bedroom were the assessor's records. And we now know that assessor's records are not the most accurate to determine Title V bedroom count. So we'd like to kind of revisit what this home actually is before we finalize approval of a septic design.
So maybe I'm happy to let Mr. Moore weigh in. I think there are a couple of pieces, just because Dan, you made some assertions there that at least don't line up with my own read of the record. And so just wanted to kind of frame that. And then I think the second piece is the plan that's been approved is a 3-bedroom plan, which is what went through Conservation Commission. I don't think we'd be in a position to approve a 4-bedroom plan now.
Oh, we
Should
agree with that. That's true.
Yep. And then just to be explicit about, if we did arrive at a place where there was receptiveness to a 4-bedroom plan, I think that would need to go to Conservation Commission, be approved, then we need to schedule the variance hearing and do those pieces for it. So there would potentially be some time impact there that I want to be explicit about in those discussions, since we don't typically schedule Conservation Commission. We don't typically schedule variance hearings until we have that piece, and so it need to follow the normal process.
And that's absolutely correct. If it does become a 4-bedroom, we basically start the process over again with Conservation and Board of Health.
Perfect. That aligns. And so again, Dan, you sort of had described it as, kind of everything but one thing, said it was a 3-bedroom system. What I'd say is my read was sort of different, which was that, sort of looking at it, looks like the assessor's records extending back to 1972 had it as a 3-bedroom home. As we know, the design flow doesn't exist because it's a cesspool. The guidance we've had for the state is in those cases where we have a design flow, the sort of specific scenarios we can use to then kind of determine whether what is proposed is an increase in the design flow as it relates to Title V variances or local variances. In this case, we actually also, from my standpoint, have a determination by a previous iteration of the board in 2007 that in fact it was a 3-bedroom system. It looks like the applicant had proposed that it was a 4-bedroom system. Then the board didn't reach the same conclusion, and so a deed recording was there. I think if the board at that time had said, yep, looks like a 4-bedroom to me, I can't imagine a scenario where a deed recording would have been required. But again, I'm happy to have that discussion, but again, just in terms of those facets, at least my read of those records is a little different than yours, but I don't
Yeah,
want
my point was that there's nothing in these meeting minutes that specifically says the Board of Health says it's a 3-bedroom house. The deed restriction was to make sure that the room in the basement, which is going to have a bathroom next to it, which has a bathroom next to it, would not be an additional bedroom. So they didn't really determine whether it was 4 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms. They just wanted to make sure that that basement room would not be used as a bedroom.
So I have follow-up questions, but I promised Mr. Moore that he'd get to chime in before I editorialize too much. So Brian, sort of let me hand the baton to you and then we'll sort of have that discussion. And so just so I'm clear, it sounds like this is a little bit of sort of floating the test case of what's the board's reaction to this. If we land at there's receptiveness to the 4-bedroom, we reset the process. And if not, then we can kind of think about where we go. So Brian, with that, I will gracefully mute myself and let you talk.
Thanks. I'll try to get right to the point. As you all know, or those of you who aren't, familiar with us, we've lived here for 15 years. We moved into this house in about 07. The listing sheet had it as a 4-bedroom house. The inspection records that I photocopied from Board of Health, which I have here, from Jeb Services in 99, from Scott Septic in 2005, all show it as listed on the actual Title V inspection reports as being a 4-bedroom house. That was our understanding when we bought it. We moved in, we've been making improvements. We're moving actually a lot line with our neighbor George Fisk in order to make the house conform to zoning bylaws, and that's a pretty penny. And in the interest of what we thought would be an improvement to the site conditions here, we contacted Dan McIntyre and hired him to come in and do some test pits with the objective of putting in a new 4-bedroom, a new septic system that would be designed for the 4 bedrooms that our house was. And we learned that the original plan that was drawn up by Dan McIntyre was actually in July, and that was for 4 bedrooms. And that was turned away because of this issue of the declaration that was recorded in 2008. And I can tell you from being in that meeting that we were adamant in the meeting that we were not deciding that the house was a 3 or 4 bedroom. It was all about the basement. And in fact, the records show that our original planned basement layout was modified to remove any and all doors, because a door would have made one of those rooms downstairs constituted as a bedroom because of the fact that there was a door. Right now, there are no doors in the basement. We haven't been using it as a bedroom. And when we went to go and do the design, we entered an agreement with Dan and he designed a 4-bedroom septic, and that was turned away. And our concerns are that, this never really, I'm not sure how often the assessor's department, they just defaulted through their own regulations to calling this a 3-bedroom house, because that's what their regulations, I guess, say to do. And this house predates those, this house was built long before they were actually assessing, they had assessor's records in that database. We looked back at old regulations from the 70s, which talk about the use of rooms and what should be considered bedrooms. And, on this version of the actual bylaws, it says that any room that isn't this, that, the other should be considered a bedroom. And by doing the math from this version of the 1976 domestic water supply and sewage disposal regulations, by the current Title V regulations, by the current Town of Sherborn Board of Health regulations, and by the Mass Building Code, this house is a 4-bedroom house with 6 rooms total. And the assessor came and agreed, and we did that in essence to try to correct the record. It doesn't change our taxes. It doesn't change anything else, just correcting the record. I don't know when they were last in here inspecting the interior, of the house, but it must have been 50 some odd years. So I'm sorry that we live in a small, tiny house. I mean, it's a very small house. We're very happy with it. And at the time that we recorded that deed restriction in 08, you know, we were at a point of duress with living in a rodent infested home, and trying to get construction workers in to finish off the basement. And we were in really no position to argue with anything at the time. We just wanted to get our permit. And we saw that as a means to an end. And we had our attorney read it, and he added language to the covenant because he felt that we would be, you know, we were doing ourselves a disservice by just agreeing to that language without modifying it to include the provision that says, you know, that until the septic is replaced, this is how the house will be treated. It doesn't say it is a 3-bedroom house. It just says the basement won't be used as a bedroom, and it's going to be treated this way until the septic is, you know, repaired or replaced. And that's what we're doing right now. I don't think that we're asking for anything that we're not entitled to. And I understand that there's probably a lot of disagreement about that. But, you know, we've been through the ringer with this house, and we're prepared to really, I think, go on this issue. And we don't understand why there would be any problem, since it meets the state Title V code for 4-bedroom. It meets the Sherborn Board of Health regulations for a 4-bedroom, and it meets Mass Building Code for 4-bedroom. And now the assessor's office has come and inspected and agreed that that's the case. And no matter how it's adjudicated, it is a 4-bedroom house. And I'm sorry that that's an inconvenient, you know, record, but that's the way it exists. And that's why we're trying to take the temperature if we can get the 4-bedroom septic in, so it'll be appropriately designed for this house.
Thanks so much, Brian. A follow-up question. On the screen right now, I've got the 2007 floor plans. And so I presume this was prepared by you in the context of the building.
Can you pull that up? There's 4 different versions of the 2007.
I've got it shared right now.
I'm sorry, I gotta figure out how to see it.
And so in the version that I'm seeing, it's highlighted here. We've got 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and office listed. We've got kitchen and living room. We've got 3-season porch. And then we've got the existing conditions in the basement, which is a half bath that was being converted. So again, as you sort of, for me, the tension I have is that in the submission that was included with the building permit that was requesting work that was completed, what was provided to us was a 3-bedroom house. It's 3 bedrooms here. It doesn't say 4 bedrooms. It says 3 on the listed plans. And so from my standpoint, the 2 follow-up questions I had is that then in looking at the 2022 plans that were submitted with this one, it appears that this is now described as a sunroom and there's a porch off the front. And so I guess the first question I had was, you know, what's been the alteration of the use of space? Because again, 3-season porch, we don't typically treat as a room and wouldn't have treated in 2007. It was described as a sunroom. I didn't see that as part of the materials that were submitted for the building permits. I was hoping
that porch was built in 1979. It was a 3-season porch. It has had new windows and doors put in it, but it's not a heat space. So it's a 3-season porch, and that's the way they've seen it.
Yep, no, that sounds fine. And so it's described as a sunroom in the contemporary plans, but could still fairly be described as 3-season porch.
Yeah, we just call it the sunroom because that's what we call
it. And so I guess, so for this, what I'm going to say, Brian, is I think this phase, I appreciate your input. I think this is the piece to take that temperature of the room. I'll sort of take the chair's prerogative and say, you know, from my standpoint, I think the question is, you know, when we say what the house is entitled to, when we don't have a design flow, we had looked at those typical patterns of use. The assessor's records don't define what counts as a bedroom for Sherborn regulations. It's one of the things we do when we don't have a design flow to say, what are the standards we'll look at? From my standpoint, if we have plans that were used to approve a building permit, those reasonably supplant that. And so if the 3-bedroom plans are what was used to approve the permit for the basement, that means that the Board of Health has made a determination about what that space is, how those rooms are counted and treated in the context of work that's now been done. At least for myself, I'm uncomfortable going back and saying, well, we called it a 3-bedroom then to do this, but now we really think it's a 4-bedroom, recognizing that I wasn't there in 2007. But the reality is the record I have is the record I have, and it looks like the plans that were submitted was that it was a 3-bedroom. And beyond that, as the board, if we didn't think that it was a 3-bedroom system, the entire conversation about the deed recording would have been moot, because there'd be no issue in making the basement not a bedroom, because it would have been a 4-bedroom system. So I, again, wasn't there, but that pattern of outcome doesn't make a lot of sense to me if the board itself felt agnostic as to the room count. What do others think, and where are you at?
I had the same thought of what compelled them, even though it's not in the minutes saying that the board determined it's 3 bedrooms, the deed requirement that they requested called it a 3-bedroom. And it's hard to know what, I don't know what condition the basement was in, if it was completely finished or not. I know that the bathroom was expanded, but otherwise the upstairs, 6 rooms and 3 bedrooms, even 8 rooms were considered 3-bedroom homes. So there's that discrepancy, and we follow assessors when there's no other information. It's hard to know what other information there was at the time that was compelling for that.
Becca, I see your hand up. Do you
Yeah.
want to Brian, you're not on mute.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Rebecca, go ahead.
I just have a question. So this homeowner wants to put in a 4-bedroom septic. What is the septic that's there now?
There's
And
a
this was,
cesspool.
I'm sorry?
A cesspool is currently
Right,
present.
okay. So the board, we're objecting to putting in even if it's a 3-bedroom house, isn't it beneficial to have a bigger septic system for the environment?
So what I would
For us,
say,
from the Board of Health perspective?
so
Isn't it because of the variances, right?
well, so I think it becomes a question of, if the question is, can Dan install a system that could have a set of physical properties that would allow a design flow of 440 gallons per day and call it a design flow of 330 and a 3-bedroom home, I think is a separate question from, is the condition of installing a calling it a 4-bedroom system an increase in design flow? If it is, it's not our typical pattern to grant additional design flow for properties that have Title V variances. And so I think that becomes kind of the key question of, if we think that this was a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom is going in, that's an increase of design flow, which we wouldn't typically grant if it were new
Variance.
construction.
Yeah.
If we said that it was always a 4-bedroom, then we'd say you can grant that variance. It's not a change in design flow because it was always a 4-bedroom. The tension then is, in 2007, it appears on the submitted plans and the behavior of the board that they treat it as a 3-bedroom.
And I
And
think,
sorry.
yep, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just was clarifying, making sure I'm understanding things. So the first assessment did not predate the ownership of the house by this person.
The previous assessments, I think 1972 to 2021, or whatever the date intervals of those assessments, were all for a 3-bedroom home. To Brian's point, that doesn't mean that the assessors went in and did an independent assessment on each of those, but rather that set of records has been static for this time frame and has now been updated based on the Moore's discussion with the assessor to say, we think this should be a 4-bedroom. But prior to the current reassessment, it has been a 3-bedroom assessment, I think, for all the records we have.
And is part of the
Okay.
issue that the current, it is a cesspool, which is basically deemed to be non-compliant with Title V, which, I agree conceptually that obviously any new system is a vast improvement. I think we're all on board with that. I think it becomes a question of, is this to be construed as an additional load, which would constitute new construction, which would not entitle it to variances or not? Is that pretty much the whole?
But didn't the homeowner tell us that they aren't doing any changes?
Well, so I think So for me, it's a question of, there's no building permit before us. It's if you say this has been a 4-bedroom home for the entirety of its life, then there's no new construction consideration here. So there's no building or there's no change. If the Moores sell their home and somebody tears it down and replaces the house using the newly replaced system, then they'd have a 4-bedroom system. And if what's in place or what's entitled to that property is a 3-bedroom system, that would be a net gain in flow. And the part that's sort of sticky for me is that in 2007, when the application was made to the board, the representation was, at least as it's reflected in the plans, that it was a 3-bedroom home. And so with specific strategies used to reduce the risk of net gain and design flow with the deed recording to manage the basement. And so it appears that the intent of the board was not to allow an increase in design flow at that time.
Is there any difference? I just want to make sure I understand it. So is there a half bath in the basement right now or a full bath?
There's now a full bath in the basement, which is part of the plans that were proposed in 2007. So let me go back and I'll pull up the contemporary floor plan.
Okay, and does the concept, and is there egress to the outside from the basement, or do you have to go through the first floor to get in and out?
You can walk right out. It's a walkout.
Right. So I guess, is that part of the issue as well, that, if you have a full bath and you have a room downstairs and you have access from that space to the outdoors that you don't need to go through, is that typically something we would consider a bedroom under today's standards or not?
Yes, I think we would.
Right. So I
Full
think
bath, that's essentially a suite. Doesn't matter if there are doors isolating it from the rest of the house, and it has a separate entrance, which is a
right.
different issue than what we're wrestling with right now.
No,
but
I know it
another-
is, but that it's
Yeah.
sort of augmenting sort of the complexity, Brian, is that we've had people in similar circumstances, not exactly the same, because every house is unique and every issue is different. But once you convert the half bath to a full bath, that next person can easily be using that as a bedroom.
So
And right? I mean, is that part?
Can I ask a sort of sniff test for the group? Because I think that I think what Mr. Moore is asking is to say, look, I see that potential. That's why I'd like to design a system that would accommodate it. And so, I think that's what I'm hearing from the bring into compliance. For me, the pieces that I'm concerned about are, is there an increase in design flow? And I guess one question I have is, could we approve a 4-bedroom system and say it's conditional on no additional rooms? That again, if the intent is to bring it into compliance with the historical patterns of use for the home, certainly acceptable, or it certainly may be acceptable, because you'd say, I am improving the current condition. I am creating no new design flow with the decision you're making today. But I wouldn't be enthusiastic to say, hey, in 2007, we called it one thing. In 2022, we called it something else. Now that I've got 4 bedrooms, I've got 6-room house and a deed recording downstairs. So we'd like to add, 3 more rooms to it with an addition or something else. Because for me, that sort of serialization of it undermines the intent, the regulatory intent. But if we said the house is fixed in its current room count, but now is a 4-bedroom septic that's better suited to managing that room count. Again, I don't know if that would be appealing to the applicant, but to me, that is easier to consider than some of the other scenarios.
Matt, could I add one very small thing? And that is that in 2005, this passed a Title V inspection, and regulations change, as do your own definitions about what is a room. So we're looking back now and trying to superimpose current interpretations of what rooms are to a meeting that was held in 2007. My wife and I look at this declaration, which says, unless and until the septic system is upgraded to comply with the Board of Health and state regulations, and then it gives the things that we have to do. We look at this as one of the compelling reasons why we're trying to put in a 4-bedroom septic.
Perfect.
So
So Steve, I just want to, I appreciate the fact, I think you've made your point, and the intent of this isn't to be a back and forth with you right now. It really is for us to take that temperature to give you and Dan some guidance about what we'd recommend comes next. Matt, I think I heard you have a comment.
Yeah, so I think I'm having a similar struggle as you, Matt. Like, it seems clear that in 2007, the board defined this as a 3-bedroom house. And that 0.4 on the deed recording does sort of allow it to be expanded. But I think the issue for me becomes, yeah, you could make it a 4-bedroom system if you didn't need variances. And so that sort of puts us in this tricky spot where, like, they can't comply with our regulations because they can't for an expanded design flow, because they would need variances, which we don't typically grant. And so I think the deed recording, the 0.4 of the deed recording itself isn't like a blanket out, because we wouldn't allow an increased design flow. And it seems like the board then thought it was a 3-bedroom system. Having said that, when I look at this, I think I would have had a hard time calling it a 3-bedroom property back then, based on this. So I am conflicted. I could be open to your sort of point about if we don't, we bring it into compliance, because I think ultimately that's what's going to serve the public interest the best. But we do have to do something to make sure it doesn't get sort of expanded on that in the sort of serial way like you described.
So Rebecca, go ahead, Daryl. No, fire away.
I was going to say, I think for me, the thing that complicates it is the plans that were submitted in 2007 identified one of the rooms now identified as a bedroom as an office. And I think with ignoring the layout of the current basement with that full bath, what was proposed, I think the proposal back then would have been consistent with a 3-bedroom home. So that's the part we have in our records, something that says this was a 3-bedroom.
And
it's documented in the Board of Health files. And so I'm not sure why, if it was advertised as a 4-bedroom home, why are there 2007 plans that called one room an office? I'm mystified by that.
I would also say, I think when it was advertised, I mean, we have seen many houses that are not advertised appropriately in Sherborn as it relates to bedroom count. So I'm not going to say, real estate listing is what does it, because the number of, no, you can totally turn this bonus room into a guest suite or whatever is not infrequently seen. And so to me, I think that 2007 part is sticky. What are your reactions if we said it can be a 4-bedroom system, but the room count can't exceed whatever we arrive at today?
Well, I'll speak for Brian for a minute, but he can correct me if I misspeak. But I think Daryl hit the nail on the head. It's not the basement that's the 4th bedroom, and the homeowners were willing to keep the deed recording on there, indicating that the basement can't be used as a bedroom. It's really the office room, whether that passes a smell test as not being a bedroom. It's at the end of the hall, past the bathroom. If the board were to be looking at these as new home plans and a builder put office or bonus room or library on that room, you would think twice about saying it wasn't a bedroom.
Although if we're on the ground floor, I think we'd say it doesn't have to be a bedroom. Like, we have lots of ground floor rooms that aren't bedrooms that you can sort of say that for. I think if it were a 2nd floor room, we would absolutely call it a bedroom. If we're saying, this is the ground floor, that piece sort of doesn't apply. And then Rebecca, I saw you had your hand up. I want to make sure you have a chance to comment or a question.
Yeah. Thanks. Can I talk now?
Yep, fire away.
So I think if the homeowner is doing something that benefits the sort of overall environment and drinking water, and it's consistent with state code, I'm not sure I think it's more relevant than what might have happened in 2007 if they're not changing the design flow from what
I think
state code would call it. But if it's improving the system and it's what the state codes and the local regulations tell us it should be, isn't it appropriate to have it be whatever is appropriate right now in today's standards of evaluation?
It's all about the variances. It's the variances.
And it's the state
no-brainer.
variances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rebecca, if it was Sherborn, we would do the +1 bedroom. And then it would be consistent, with the past record.
But,
We'd
if we
add one,
start-
but it's the Title V variances that we're not allowed to do that.
And that we don't do that. And so I think,
And we haven't
So-
for
so-
other people.
so I just want to kind of take a straw poll of, for me, the only way I can see a system that is designed other than for a strict 3-bedroom is if we say, look, we want to achieve maximum compliance. We will treat this as a fixed room count with, whatever we're calling the room count. I see six rooms on the right-hand side of the current plan. And then, again, the difference from mudroom or playroom is typically how we would handle that. If we treat that as a mudroom and the office is a laundry, then I count it as a 7-room room count. And I would, like, from my standpoint, installing a 4-bedroom system to a property limited to a 7-room room count, I wouldn't have concerns about, because I think one could make the assertion that there is no change in the room count before or after the system is installed. And it's, again, my position would be, I think it's a 3-bedroom system. But if we want to design it for a design floor of 440 gallons and call it a 3-bedroom system, that works for me. It doesn't let a future property owner build on additional rooms. I haven't heard anybody say, boy, I think we should be able to add rooms onto this, because it feels like it was a 4-bedroom to me all along.
I
And
need
so-
to ask one other question, because I see the sunroom next to the dining nook, and there's an opening there. Are there doors there? Outdoor grade doors separating the sunroom from the dining nook?
Yeah, it's a step down. It's like a porch step down and there's 2 French doors.
Okay, and insulated, so against the
insulated, but
cold
it's
as
not a heated
opposed to,
space.
okay, so it doesn't get heated from the rest of the house in the
No.
winter.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I want to be sensitive to the fact that we've got outside folks for the 750. And so, maybe we can just go through with kind of a gut check for each of us about, do you believe that the property is, previous to any piece, is a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom historical use, recognizing Mr. Moore may have his own point of view? Where are you landing? And do you have a way that you can see a 440 gallon per day design flow being approved? So maybe we can just go through folks sequentially.
Guess that means me first.
I think so. That's my understanding of the alphabet.
So, I really do wish that there were no Title V variances requested. It would make this a lot easier. I'm uncomfortable saying that the prior board who looked at this in 2007 made an error, which would have to be one part of it, that 3-bedroom determination was somehow in error. And then the other part that is hard for me is that plans submitted by, I assume, the applicant identified 3 bedrooms. And I'm not finding a way through that.
All right. Matt, what's your take?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I feel like the prior board called it 3 bedrooms, the plans called it 3 bedrooms, the applicant signed a deed recording calling it 3 bedrooms. And there's sort of no way for us to upgrade the system without granting Title V waivers, which we don't do. And so I think it's hard for me to move. I mean, the only way I could find a way to move forward is if we find a way to sort of ironclad, make sure we're not creating a precedent that would allow others to sort of do the +1s requiring Title V variants.
And
But I'm not
Lisa,
sure I can do that.
Thanks, Matt. Lisa, what's your take?
Yeah, that's my exact sticking point too, is that we've actually denied people these Title V variances for somewhat analogous situations where there can be errors all the time. We run into this all the time, that how a property is listed is inconsistent with what it is, but that doesn't sort of relieve us of not being able to grant Title V variances, so that I think is my issue as well.
Rebecca?
My problem is that I think obviously, there are legal issues that I think it would be beneficial to hear an attorney comment. I'm not properly able to do that. My overall interest would be to protect the environment. I think that it's tricky when the state and current regulations define it differently than what happened several years ago by another board. I don't know. I think it might be our obligation to be consistent with current regulations. I don't know, and I would be very interested in hearing somebody who has the ability to interpret the laws comment before I cast a vote.
Sounds very reasonable. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, I think for me, I think I sort of am aligned, I think more with sort of Daryl, Matt, Lisa, where for me, a board made a specific act, including an approval of a building permit on the basis of the bedroom count, the plan that was submitted, that was sort of tied to it. And so from my standpoint, the board itself established or had the basis for room count that was supplied in the context of its own decision-making. And that was part of the basis of that decision-making, including the requirement for a deed recording. And so from my standpoint, the board has made a determination of a 3-bedroom count. With the current pieces, I'm concerned that it would be inconsistent with our own board's previous determination to say, oh, well, you know, same rooms, it's now 4. And, you know, that's because we sort of want to do something different. That feels, I think, really uncomfortable to me, and I would not be supportive. I would be open to 440. What I don't know, and that, this might be a question for Dan, or it might be a question for town council, is, I don't know that I would have an objection to a 440 gallon per day 3-bedroom system that allowed more flow in a treated, structured way, but that tied us to a 3-bedroom, because then that would limit you room count wise in a way that doesn't open up new capacity to add space, which I think is the interest that is closest to my heart. And so the only way I could see to get to yes is if that is a technical prospect, to say this is a 3-bedroom system for the purposes of permits, design flow, everything else, it's a 3-bedroom system, but we're designing it for 440 gallons per day. I think the tension there is if we're designing it for 440 gallons per day, that's a design flow and it's higher than 330. And so I don't know that that's possible. I don't see a way for myself to get to saying that this has historically been treated by this board as a 4-bedroom system.
And I have to say, part of me says, okay, someone may move in and treat this as a 4-bedroom home because it could look like that to them, and therefore the extra flow would be protective, more protective, sizing for the extra flow, that is. But that just opens up people, not here, but people adding rooms and then later, asking for larger systems and things. There's creep. It's a tough one. This is very, very tough because it's such a slippery slope in terms of how this decision could be used in other situations.
Well, maybe the person back, maybe 2007 should have been called a 4-bedroom. Maybe they were doing a favor for a friend back then, and they should have changed
We
it at
can't
that time.
can't do that, Rebecca.
But I would say is I think that we need to, I think the principle that we need to be consistent. There's nothing that suggests that the 2007 board was acting inappropriately. The plan submitted said 3-bedroom on it. It was consistent with the pattern of room counting that the board would use. I think that I don't think it's appropriate to say, well, no, there was something untoward there. Really, they meant it was something different. I guess the question for Dan and Brian is sort of on hearing this, we've got 2 pathways. We can either say, you've heard the impression, I don't expect that it would change dramatically, but if you would like to resubmit a 4-bedroom plan, we can. If on hearing this, you want to proceed with the variances for a 3-bedroom plan so that you don't have to reset that clock, because given what I'm hearing, there's some kind of skepticism. Rebecca, if you're formally requesting a town council input, we can continue it. But I don't think we can't continue it to be a consideration of a 4-bedroom system. It would be then continuing it to consider the 3-bedroom system. And so I guess Dan and Brian, how would you like to proceed?
Well, the only reason we drew up plans and came in front of voluntarily failed our own septic system was because we thought we could put in a 4-bedroom septic system, which would pay for itself when we eventually sell the house 10 years from now. So this is a huge setback because the cost of this system, 3-bedroom, is $80,000 and growing, which is way above 10% of the value of our house. And it's not supposed to be above 10% of the value of your house.
Yeah, it wouldn't make economic sense to install a 4-bedroom septic and call the house 3 bedrooms. It's not a practical solution.
And I think, again, it may not actually get us anywhere because 440 is
Right.
bigger than 330. So I don't think we could call it no increase in design flow. So,
Right.
so really the
But
question.
if I could just add one more bit of information, my belief that the 2007 board really didn't make a determination on bedroom count was that the sample deed recording that was sent out to the homeowner actually left that blank.
What I would say, I don't think,
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything that's left me feeling like we're real close to getting there. Like, again, for me, it's the building plans that say, here's the floor plan that's the basis for you approving a building permit. It's got 3 bedrooms. And so saying that the deed recording language doesn't appear to be the intent, because if the board intended a 4-bedroom house or was agnostic to the bedroom count, there'd be literally no reason to have a deed recording.
No, there was. The deed recording was specifically so the room in the basement that now has a full bathroom next to it would not be a bedroom.
But
That's
why
what the
could,
deed recording was for.
but why couldn't it be a bedroom if you had a 3-bedroom and an office on the building plan?
Because there was no door in the basement. We
No, but
took the
but
door
again,
out.
no, but
I think the point I'm trying to
fine,
make
that's
here
your
is that
perspective.
there would
That's
never
not
have
the
needed,
board's.
unless you were, the reason you needed a deed recording was to get to less than 4 bedrooms.
Right, and so from the board standpoint, there wouldn't be an indication for a deed recording to say you can't make it a bedroom, because the board doesn't independently care about whether, you know, we really want to make sure the structure of your bedroom or the pattern of your bedroom is this very specific way. But rather, if you said, we've got a 3-bedroom plan, we're adding space in the basement. If the board was agnostic, you wouldn't say that space can't be a bedroom, because by the room counting rules and the pattern of the plan that was submitted, it was a 3-bedroom system. So again, we've talked about this for about 45 minutes. I am happy to consider the 3-bedroom. I'm happy to continue if, Rebecca, you want to request town council, but we need to do one or the other, because I don't think further back and forth is going to change either perspective.
Just a quick 10 seconds, Matt. It gets back to my point where I don't think the board really made a decision whether it was 3, 4, or 5 bedrooms. No one knows what that cesspool was designed for. They just wanted to make sure that that room that now in the basement that now has a full bathroom wasn't going to add to the design flow, whatever that design flow is.
Matt, can you pull up the deed recording?
Sure, give me 1 second.
So actually, I'm more interested now that if the sample deed recording was provided with a blank and the homeowners filled in, or their lawyer filled in 3, they could have filled in 4. So
Yeah, do we
Well-
have a copy of the actual deed recording?
No.
Okay.
Yes. you
yeah, I
do.
remember seeing it somewhere
Yeah, it's right there.
there.
I mean, the deed recording says any dwelling should be limited to more
It
than.
says 3 bedrooms. It's right in the deed recording. That's what the official record is. So
Unless and until the septic system is upgraded. That's what it says.
Right,
Right,
and,
what
and
we're
so then I
saying,
think
Brian,
if
is
it didn't require Title V, then that would be totally copacetic. So if your upgrade didn't require Title V variance, I would 100% let you say, yep, no sweat. This Title IV, Level 4 applies, because that then makes sense and says, yep, I don't want to be tied into perpetuity, but you have a Title V variance. And so this deed recording doesn't say, I get to increase my design flow because I have a deed recording that I'm taking off. I think this is saying, I'm not, like, if you didn't have a Title V variance, I think what I would say is you would be entitled to the
Yeah, I think,
Sherborn only variance, and we would say this can be rescinded with that. I don't think
yeah,
that
I think
changes
that's
the
what, I
Title
think
V.
that's what, exactly what number 4 says, which is if you were to like upgrade your septic system and it met both Board of Health and state regulations, you could terminate this whole requirement to keep it to 3. But what you guys are asking for is a variance to the state regulations and our regulations and to raise it to 4. So that's inconsistent with the legal language that's put forth in this deed recording.
So
So
it's
Dan,
not-
does that mean, Dan, that we can't do this because of the fact of the way that this lot just exists, you know, which existed before wetlands and all that other stuff came to pass? Is that what this means?
I don't want to have further, I mean, like, we are way over time and we've got other appointments that are on tonight. If we want to vote on the variances, I'm happy to do it. If we want to get legal counsel and continue this to a future meeting to consider the 3-bedroom system, I'm happy to do it. If you're not interested in pursuing a 3-bedroom system, then there's no reason for us to extend it.
Dan, can we vote on the variances, Dan?
You can't vote on the variances for a 4-bedroom system because it won't
No, for
apply.
the 3.
You have,
Dan-
opened- the hearing has been opened and all this
Yeah.
discussion has taken place, and it is a
Yeah.
3-bedroom.
Whatever. Can we just get, please, approval to put in a 3-bedroom septic?
Dan, I'm not sure if you're commenting, you're on mute. So if you've got something to add, I'm happy to consider the 3-bedroom plan and 3-bedroom septic.
No, I was saying was that the only thing that the board can act on tonight is what we submitted, which is. the
Yep.
3-bedroom.
Okay. Perfect. So let's go to that letter. And Dan, we're well into it, but if I'm gonna pull up the 49 septic plan, if you could just outline the background and basis for that, and then we'll go through those variances.
Dan, you muted.
Yeah, I can't hear.
There you go.
All
Yeah,
right,
so
Dan,
you,
fire
the
away.
existing cesspools are in the back of the house. There's a main cesspool and 3 overflow cesspools. We're proposing to eliminate those with a new septic system using IA technology, the Elgin systems, which are approved by the state for a 2-foot reduction in groundwater offset. Because of the wetlands in the vicinity, the groundwater table is quite high here. We were not able to do percolation tests in the area of the system, although we did get a percolation test on the other side of the house where the grades was higher. So we're asking for a waiver on the percolation test. We're asking for a local upgrade waiver on the groundwater offset from 4 feet to 2 feet, just to minimize the mounding of the system and minimize the grading toward the wetland. The tanks will still be in the back because that's where the plumbing is, and we're pumping it up to the side of the house. We will be raising the yard and doing some grading to keep the drainage from flowing directly over the system and then down to the wetlands. This has been approved by conservation, and with that, I can turn it over to the board for any questions.
I have 2, and Dan, I know that you're diligent and look at things from all angles. Any way of eliminating those 2 Title V variance requests? I understand the perk test. I don't know if the drought would help with that now.
I think the perk test is the one that we could probably eliminate if we went out there now, because the water tables are low. We could probably get that knocked off. Raising the yard another 2 feet is the real issue. We're sloping down toward the wetlands, would end up probably putting in retaining walls. And as Brian already mentioned, we hit the $80,000 mark on this 3-bedroom septic system. So we're gonna be adding retaining walls, adding fill,
Mhm.
adding another leach trench to get up to 4 bedrooms. I would not be surprised if this hits 6 figures. So that's really the issue. It becomes a manifest injustice on the cost of the system relative to the
Right.
valuation of the house. Which is why DEP adopted that policy about the 10% of the assessed value.
So do we want to vote on these variances if there's no further discussion on the plan?
Yes.
Do I have a motion for variance to section 5.1D, 2 perk tests required, SIF test used due to groundwater, given the high groundwater features that Dan described?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. Do I have a motion to approve variance to section 8.01, groundwater offset to be 5 feet, 2 feet provided per Title 5 using IA technology?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion?
Daryl, I. Oops.
Hearing none. Daryl?
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. Do I have a motion for variance to section 8.02, depth to seasonal high groundwater less than 5 feet, a naturally occurring condition?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. Do I have a motion for section 10.2, wetland offset to be 100 feet with a distance of 53 feet being provided, which is compliant with Title 5?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. We then have the 2 Title 5 variances or the 2 Title 5 waivers. Do I have a motion for a waiver for section 15.4051H, reduce groundwater offset by 2 feet from 4 feet to 2 feet for soils with greater than 2 MPI perk rates?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. Do I have a motion to approve a waiver for section 15.4051I, use of test to determine design as previously discussed?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. And Mark, are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are conditional to deed recordings, both for the garbage grinder prohibition and the innovative alternative septic system use.
Perfect.
I also have issue with that full bath in the basement, but
I don't think we can resolve that issue if we're simultaneously saying you can't put in a 4-bedroom system.
right. True, I guess the existing deed recording will stand, so.
Do I have a motion to approve with those conditions?
So moved.
So moved. Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. And with that, I will close the hearing. Ellen, do I need a motion to close the hearing?
No,
So you really probably
It was-
closed the hearing before you voted on the plan.
yeah,
Okay,
So
Go ahead, Daryl.
a point that came up here in the end is the cost of the system, and in Title V, there are some
Daryl,
exemptions, but I don't want to discuss them tonight, but I don't know if there's anything there that
Right.
would have bearing on this.
I think that what we've done is approve the variances that were presented. We're not going to have
Yes,
further discussion
agree.
because we are at an hour into this. It doesn't preclude the applicant from presenting an alternative plan or making alternative claims. It just resolves the variance hearing for the plans that were submitted, approved by Concom and posted. If we want to revisit the topic, I think it should be after, Concom and the sort of normal flows as we discussed before. But I want to bound the discussion because it's clear we're not going to get to consensus either entirely within the board or with the or in the applicant, and want to make sure we're respectful for the time for the folks on at 7:50.
No, we understand, Matt. We appreciate the time you took tonight.
Matt, what I would suggest is that even though you voted within the hearing, I would still close the hearing so it's completed.
Perfect. Do you have a motion to close the hearing?
You don't need a motion.
Perfect. I'll close the hearing. I need a gavel or a beaver. Either way.
May we
go ahead.
ask for input for future reference, because should we be making decisions based on state and current codes, or should we be doing them based on decisions 15 years ago? I would really like some advice and input from an attorney or land use attorney or state or town council for future reference, because it's going to happen again where current regulations and some decision made 15 years ago might not be consistent. And I think it would be helpful because most of the time,
I'm going to table that. Again, we can talk about it. We've got folks who've been waiting 40 minutes for the discussion for 7:50.
I'm not saying now.
No, but I'm saying even we can talk about it today. I just want to get the 7:50 appointment done. And then I'm happy to circle back to that question, Rebecca.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks.
Perfect. Tom, my apologies on the timing. Is Jim still here and available? Oh, perfect. Jim, thank you so much for your patience.
Oh, no problem. The good old times when I was a Board of Health agent.
Perfect. I will get your results on the screen, but if you have something to share, you're also welcome to share a screen.
And Matt, could I say a comment or two?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you, Tom Trainer from the Groundwater Protection Committee. I want to thank Jim for staying on right now and for coming out multiple times during the summer to help residents take samples at their kitchen faucets for their well testing, and add one piece of color to what you're about to hear. I think there's a huge pent up interest in our residents in testing their wells. We launched this with RCAP's help back in June, and had Jeannie post a simple notice about free well testing to the first 40 applicants. And within 48 hours, I got an email from Jim's office that told us they had 82 people applying. So I think that just shows the level of interest. But other than that, I'd like to leave the time for Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, and I think we had, I think it was 120 on the wait list still. Sherborn. It was a phenomenal turnout. So thank you for helping getting the word out. So, good evening, and thanks for having me back tonight. Just wanted to, briefly go over the results, what we found. As you see, we actually did one extra test. For whatever reason, we already had it scheduled, so we went through with it. So we ended up doing 41 tests in Sherborn. As you might have recalled, we were doing a suite of different health-based contaminants, as well as some secondary aesthetic type stuff. The health-based stuff we're really highlighting tonight. So the health-based we're looking for is total chloroform, and of course E. coli if there's was a positive. Arsenic, nitrate, radon, uranium, manganese over 0.3 milligrams, kind of like the health-based ones we're looking for. Then we did a suite of other secondary contaminants, the sodium chloride, iron, that the homeowner got a copy of, but we didn't really highlight because they're more of a secondary contaminant type thing. So out of the 41 tests, 17 of the tests came back with either some kind of health-based issue or a total coliform bacteria, which is an indicator of some sort of health-based problem, if you will. Out of those 17, each one actually had only one contaminant of concern in each one. So there's 17 different tests with only one different issue per test. Biggest issue, total coliform bacteria. That is the most common one we always find, actually. Each one of those was screened for E. coli by the lab automatically, but none of them came back with an E. coli positive. Most of these we could kind of trace back to the well. While meeting with the homeowner, we always took a look at the well and made notes of any kind of issues. Most of these can trace back to having a non-sanitary well cap, or if they did not being on properly, maybe the gardener hit it with the lawnmower and knocked the electrical junction back. Also, we had quite a number of wells that were drilled wells, but they're still in their pits, if you will. They're probably put in prior to pitless adapters, so they're below grade and just more prone to having bacterial issues. From those, the other two issues we did see is radon, 2 cases of that and 1 of uranium. Actually a little lower than we actually expected to see, being a higher area of concern for radon and uranium, but we did only get the 2 to 1. We did see some other stuff, some salt and saw quite a number of exceedances of the Massachusetts standard for salt, the 20, not many over the EPA 1 of 100. A lot of residents still definitely had a lot of concerns about sodium. Kind of seems to be the #1 issue we get back about sodium, if you will. But it's kind of what I really wanted to highlight. I'm happy to open up to anyone had any questions, or if there's any other further information you want us to mine, we'd be happy to kind of dig that out for you.
So I just want to be clear. Hi, it's Lisa. You didn't do any VOCs, PFAS, anything. It's strictly like the select metals, the bacteria, and then the secondary M scales.
Correct. VOCs due to cost, and PFAS. Mass DEP did that testing last year, so we stayed away from that with this program. We're in the 3rd year of this program. We originally were thinking about doing PFAS, but there's a lot of legal issues when it first came out, and then Mass DEP, when they came out with their own testing program, we decided that we were going to stay away from it.
Okay. Great, thanks.
So I guess I find it interesting that there are so many people who are on a waiting list. I hope maybe we need to do more to reach out to people and remind them that they can test their water at any time. And, there are labs that are not too far from us that they could go to, and they can also phase the testing so they don't have to do every test all at once if they don't want the cost all at once.
Yeah, I think free is a big motivator.
Right, and it shouldn't be for some of these.
I know,
because
but
we're talking maybe for the basics, $150. So that shouldn't be an obstacle, I don't think. But maybe it's also made it easy. Did you send people out to take the test, or did the homeowners take the samples?
Oh, we met with the homeowner, and it was up to the homeowner if they allow us in the house or not. Either we could take the test for them, or we'd show them how to do it. But we came right to the home and brought it to the lab that day for them, and took a look at the well on site as well. So it was very easy for the homeowner.
Yeah. Right.
So
Easy,
years ago,
easy
and that
free.
might be something that I don't know that the Board of Health should organize, but when I wasn't on the Board of Health, I did, since we were about to do testing, I just reached out to a whole bunch of people in town I knew and had, 20, 25 people reply, and I collected, I told them what the choices were for tests and got a whole list and went to the lab and got all the containers and had people come pick them up, and I could explain to them how you fill up a VOA vial and all the rest, and then delivered all the samples to the lab. And then everybody just got their own results. I didn't get the results, so they got them, and that. So maybe if there's a way or a group in town, wink, wink, to Groundwater Protection Committee, but I don't know what it means to be an official in the town and whether one could get involved in that. But maybe there's a way to do some group effort so that it just streamlines it for people so that they do this testing more
Yeah, I mean,
regularly.
I think part of it too, Daryl, though, is like if we were going to somehow as a town make a conscious decision to assist and maybe help, either subsidize or facilitate, I think the deal we would want to make is that that they share the results, because that's really factoring into us having a better understanding of our groundwater aquifer condition. So,
Right.
that's kind of the rub. Like I could see a merit to us maybe considering that if there was going to be information sharing. But if there isn't, then it becomes really like, well, wait, so you're doing this, and if you have an issue, there's no obligation for you to share that information, but we're helping facilitate or finance. So I think that's
Oh, I don't think we should finance, and I also
but I'm
don't
just
think
saying,
that,
or facilitate. I'm just throwing out straw dogs, but like
Yeah.
I would imagine, if we were going to help people try and do that, we would hope that would lead to us getting better information to understand our aquifer conditions.
well, that's where I think, as Board of Health, if we were doing it, I think we would have to know the results, maybe. And if they told us, we'd probably have to know the location. So what I did when I did it with the folks I knew, I told them the deal was, could they please anonymously let me know, did they find anything? So one person did a pesticide test and they found a pesticide or a few pesticides. Salt was the major concern, and after that, the pH was a little low. But I don't have addresses or names or anything else to go with that. But it was remarkably much better than I was expecting. So that's the good news. And having a more anonymous way to get the data, with maybe some understanding of roughly where in town, could be helpful. But that's a bigger topic that I guess we could wrestle with at another point.
Though I would say the model, Mass DEP's model regulations, if goes into testing and requiring testing for transfer of property, almost like a Title V type thing, and they are required under the model regs to give that information to the Board of Health. So slowly but surely, you would get to know the water quality of the town and the residents. And something that we've seen in New Jersey, that they've had a regulation statewide for the last 20-25 years, and they have about 20-25% of the whole private wells in the whole state now documented for water quality.
I don't think we have that regulation, actually. So we would have to enact that as a municipal requirement, which we've discussed, that, prior to, as part of transaction, that every private well would need to be sampled and, assessed for potability in accordance with our regulations, which I linked to the state regulations. But there's not, as far as I know, there's no state requirement in Massachusetts as of now that requires that private wells be sampled before transaction.
There's no state regulations for private wells other than drilling,
Right.
really.
Right.
The ball's really in your court, actually. So.
Yeah, we know. We know that. Yeah.
You'd be surprised. Some towns, they tell me we go by the state and they don't have anything local. And sometimes I'm the first one to explain that to them, unfortunately.
Wow.
Well, we at least have that.
I mean, we're sampling 2 communities this year have no private well regulations. 2 last year. One told me they did have them. They could never produce them, but they told the longest serving board member did assure me they did have them, just could never give them to me. So you'd be surprised. Other boards are a little bit more lackadaisical.
Yeah, well, I'm an LSP, so that helps. But I appreciate, you guys doing this. It's really great.
Yeah, it is wonderful. And actually, I like your finding about the well caps. That's a relatively easy thing to address as opposed to some of the other issues.
It really is. because half the time, that's why I always look, because when we call the homeowner back, say if it's simple as changing out the well cap, at least we can tell them, when you're bleaching the well, change the cap at the same time, and then you're killing everything in there. You're not letting the contamination back in. Because I just spoke with a local health agent in a central Mass town just the other day about having a reoccurring total coliform issue, and sure enough, it's just the well cap. They just kept bleaching the well, putting the same cap back on, but that cap wasn't keeping out the contamination. So once the chlorine went away, here comes the contamination again.
And so I guess that's one question I have. Like, I think the testing piece and facilitating that would be appealing, but is also like a non-trivial list, like just in terms of thinking about how much bandwidth we have to do different things and sort of what body it is it. I would say I kind of like Lisa's straw proposal of, if we're as a town supporting that, then I think using that as an opportunity to better understand our shared environment and resource would be really appealing. Otherwise, I just don't know that it makes sense, because we've got lots of high functioning people who are able to do a lot of this, but it would be lovely if there was a way to make it as easy as possible. And it sounds like, Jim, you guys made this really easy for homeowners, which is awesome and really appreciated. I guess my second thought is, there's a bunch of this that feels like it's, again, I think people think about this when they drill the well, and they may have gotten it tested when they bought the house, or they may not have. And then you don't think about it for 20 years. And then you saw the house, you're like, God, I wonder how long we were drinking the fecal coliforms. And so I do wonder if there's some opportunity or some avenue to share the findings that we have more broadly, just so that folks can say, gosh, 30%, 40% of wells tested found something. Again, the folks getting tested are probably not a totally random sample of Sherborn, but they were the ones who are like, oh yeah, I want to test. And that may not be totally representative of every well in town with the findings, but certainly says, gosh, when I read those results, I was like, oh, well, we clearly need to get a test, because I don't know what my well's doing. And looking at that, it certainly is motivating. And I suspect lots of people would have a similar reaction if knowing how common it was in that sample of their neighbors. It's not obvious to me how to communicate that, but that feels like a real opportunity here too. And I'd sort of look to Daryl or Tom if we have thoughts there, or if that's something that could go through if there's sort of any of the push communications for the town that might be appropriate for that are not a sort of misuse of like the code red or some other notification. Like, it's not an emergency, but you'd love to amplify this for the folks who've signed up as wanting updates.
Actually, Matt, Tom here, that's actually the Groundwater Committee's plan, and it's actually on our agenda for next week, now that this report is out, to figure out how to publicize Jim's results, and taking a cue from Daryl, see if we can't do a better job of facilitating people's testing their wells. It's it's just some simple barriers that people run into reaching out to labs and thinking about it, but we'll definitely be working on that.
And I was just going to add on the conversation of disinfecting wells, as I learned from well drillers at conferences, we tell people, the general public, if they're planning to disinfect their well, to contact a professional well driller. Unfortunately, people think you can just throw bleach into the well, and that is a definite negative. They don't want to do that, because that can cause more harm than it can positive results. So we always recommend it. Jim, I don't know if you do the same, recommend they contact a well driller or a well company.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, unless they're very handy. We on anyone has a total call phone, we send out more information. Also, we send out a guidance document how to bleach a well, but it's from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, which right on it just, if you're not comfortable doing this, don't do it, if you will. But yeah, ideally, 9 times out of 10, the homeowners don't take it upon themselves.
No, we prefer them not to, because if they're using bleach, it's not the appropriate solution. They're supposed to be using a buffer disinfectant. So that's why we recommend highly they at least consult with a professional well driller beforehand.
Definitely.
And we'll be talking about whether to pass to update our regulations to require that they use a professional for disinfection.
Perfect. So, kind of in recognition of the time, I just want to see, I mean, first I would just echo, I think, the appreciation I'm sure that you got from 41 out of 41 people, Jim, for your hard work and support for members of our town and community in this program. And then Tom, a big thank you to you and the rest of the Groundwater Protection Committee who have worked hard across the board to support this. But before I sort of close out, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll sort of wrap up this piece of our evening agenda.
No, I'd say thank you also. It's great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. So let me pull back to the share screen. And so we've got a couple of agenda items. I think that Lisa, I believe, thanks so much, Jim. I think Lisa needs to drop off at 9. And so
Yeah.
I just want to tackle some of the pieces that we specifically need Lisa for. And so I thought scheduled meeting dates and 9:21 minutes are probably two of those things. Ellen, I don't know if you have any comment on the meeting dates other than 2023, here come the flying cars.
I followed the same schedule that the board has always used. I looked at the school calendar so that it was a meeting wouldn't be scheduled during school vacation week, and that happened in April. So that's why there's only one meeting noted there in April. But it does not, the second meeting in February is not a school vacation week. And then just the one meeting in July and August. But again, you can always add meetings.
Hey, Ellen, I just realized something.
Yeah.
I am presenting at the UMass Amherst conference on the 18th and 19th. So I
Of
just,
this month?
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I just totally did not realize that. I mean, there's a chance that I might be home by 7 on the 19th, but can we just assume that I'm not going to make it? And if I can, I will.
Okay.
And do we have anybody else who doesn't expect to be available on the 19th? I know that I'm here.
Are we meeting on Thursday, February 2nd?
Is that a,
Yeah, I'm not being sarcastic, Ellen. I think you meant to say February 1st.
Yeah, I think so. Because although the 2nd is Groundhog Day, Mark. So.
Well, that's
Yeah.
my
Right,
holiday.
14 plus 2 would be
so
16.
Yeah,
So
it should be the 1st. It should be the
Yep. There's a typo, that'll be, I'll
Yep.
change that to
We're
the
keeping,
first.
we're keeping you on your toes, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
It was a test.
Perfect.
Mark
Perfect.
pass.
Perfect. All right. So do we have, Ellen, do you need an approval of this or just the
Yes.
discussion? Do I
Yes,
have a motion to approve the 2023 scheduled meeting dates
moved.
Second.
as amended.
Yeah.
as
as a-
amended?
Yeah,
As
well,
amended, yeah.
now they're right? Oh, no, they're not
So
yet.
moved as amended.
Hearing no further, do I have a second?
Yeah.
Seconded.
yeah.
I think it was already seconded.
Oh, perfect. Well, then we're thirded. Hearing no further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Aye. And did anybody have edits to the 9:21 minutes?
I sent in a couple little things.
Perfect. Any other edits for that? Perfect. Do I have a motion to approve the 9:21 minutes?
So moved.
Seconded.
Hearing no further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale abstain. I think I just want to make sure we've gone through the stuff. We did those, we did the variance hearing, we did Jim. We did the farm pond, the climate work group. Thank you again, Rebecca. Beaver permit. I think we got everything other than the regulatory update. Lisa.
Right, so here,
Oh, go ahead. Fire away, Daryl.
I was gonna say the tricky thing with that is we've been trying to do it when there are all 5 of us, so that there's continuity, so we're gonna be, I guess, bumping into a few.
Do we want to roll it over? Because Lisa, you are potentially away that 19th. Do we want to roll it over to the November 1st? Or whatever.
Sure, and I guess I'm surprised that, we keep putting it on the agenda, but I don't see any of the people who told me they were interested in it ever coming to these meetings. So part of me is also like, I guess I'm not going to be overly concerned with it because we're posting it and, people don't seem to.
Well, I think it's also just a piece of, I think people are interested in the punchline, but not necessarily the play-by-play, even if they think they're interested in the play-by-play.
I guess that's true. It's very short though. That's the thing. It's not like it's this, long protracted sort of set of regulations. So.
And so maybe what we can do just in the 10 minutes we have before Lisa steps off. I would also say I have no objections to the meeting ending at 9, so I'm also on board. I just keep pinning it on Lisa, but is appealing on my end as well.
Okay.
Can we just do kind of a quick refresh of the scope of these and then we'll plan to include them on the November 2nd meeting?
Sure.
Can I make one other point? Can we give them a time maybe on the November 2nd meeting?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, let's. Ellen,
What do we have for that week?
For November 2nd, I don't think we have anything yet.
Oh, no variances or.
Yeah.
Can we schedule it for 7 o'clock?
You want it right at 7?
I mean, when you say it like that, I don't anymore.
About 7:05.
Or 7:15. Let's do 7:15.
Okay, that sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I like that.
And let's schedule it for half an hour.
Sure.
November 2nd?
Second, yeah, let's do that. That sounds good.
Okay, I won't be at that meeting, just so you know, but there'll be someone else taking minutes.
Oh my.
I'll be in Virginia.
I'm nervous already, Ellen.
I think it's still reasonable to do that. I think we'll want Ellen back in the saddle before we kind of go to where we're having I feel fine for a working session for that. I wouldn't want to get to our final punchline phase at a meeting where Ellen wasn't there. Does that sound right to folks?
Yeah, this is the review and discussion versus like
Perfect.
promulgation.
And I feel like half an hour should be sufficient. And Ellen, from an open meeting standpoint, it would be permissible for the proposed language to be circulated but not discussed, and then would be discussed at the public meeting. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Lisa.
Maybe I'm forgetting, but remember how I revised the potability regulations? So are those final? Like, where did those sit? I can't remember. You know how I linked them to the Massachusetts drinking water standards, redlined stuff. We talked about it like a couple months ago at this point. I don't remember where those are.
Well, I actually would like to discuss them. You presented the concept, I think, is as far as we got, but
okay.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't see that on this list. Not saying that we have enough time to necessarily tackle 3 things in one meeting. But yeah, I'd like to keep pushing those forward. I think it's important. That's different than the deed recordings.
I guess, Daryl and Matt, do you feel like we could roll that existing discussion into the work that you guys have done and have it be sort of under the regulation discussion?
Yeah, we could add that. I'll say that. And Lisa was present for the particular public hearing where the board discussed it the last time prior to when she was on the board. Maybe that's what enticed you, Lisa. And we spent hours discussing whether to make a change. And so I have lots of pros and cons on that and complexities where I don't think to me, it's not a simple shift. But anyway, so but I think we could, if I can find your language, again, I will roll it into what we
I-
have now. Is
Ellen
that
has it. Ellen has it.
I do have it.
Yeah,
okay?
it's a red line.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can add that to this, since this is the will section. And testing,
Okay.
and then we could look at it all at once.
Yeah, because I just don't want that to sort of fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
That makes it- And then what I would say is, I feel like Lisa said this before, and so I will say it again, which is that I sometimes do best with a deadline. And I know that one of the things that Matt and I had previously worked on that we'd not gotten to the review phase was the sort of application completeness, just commemorating our existing process in a sort of formal explicit regulation. And I am wondering if that might make sense to put on the December 7th meeting. I am on service for the second meeting in November, so I'm not 100% sure that I'll be able to
Yeah, let's
join.
not put it, let's not do it then.
And
You're
so
yeah.
let's put it as kind of a hold for the December 7th meeting for the application completeness.
Just,
Yeah, I know you'll be away then, and so I think this will
Okay.
still be a discussion where
Okay.
I think you and Mark had given some feedback. I think we'd had did some discussion. I'd like to bring it back for another discussion with the board, and then we can revisit with you when you are available prior to posting the public hearings.
okay,
Sound good?
Yep.
But we can sort of have it on the agenda, because then I'll be like, oh God, I really actually have to follow through with this instead of just having really good intentions.
I'd
So-
also say right now, it looks like the public hearing of our final version won't happen until after the first of the year anyway.
Okay.
yeah.
Doesn't that seem like that, unless a miracle happens and
Yeah, and in
we
the
resolve
in-
everything?
In the historically, boards have had regulation hearings in like February or March, because that's when it was slower, typical.
You're gonna jinx us, Ellen.
No, I know.
I think what I would say is let's see what we get to, because we've needed to roll these over a couple of times, and I'm 100% sure that if we say, yeah, we'll do that in February, then somehow we'll roll all the way up to February and then go thump. So, I think let's keep working on this with some sense of urgency, recognizing it may take us till then to get to there.
Right, and I have to say, Matt and I tried to make minimal changes so far so that they might be easier to get through.
Yeah.
So,
All right, sounds good.
okay,
Ellen, I don't think I'm missing any agenda items. Do you think I'm missing any agenda items?
I've got everything crossed off.
Perfect. I crossed some things off twice, but I do want to say.
you do have
agenda items for
Agenda
next meeting.
items.
Agenda items for next meeting. So it doesn't sound like we'll have either element of regulatory review included. Nothing specific comes to mind for me. How about for others?
I know there's one variance hearing scheduled.
Okay. I'll take it. I don't hate having, I don't want to add things just to add things. So,
If we have a more limited, no, maybe it won't work. I was going to say a more limited group to just come up with other ideas about the regs, but then somebody's going to be out. So never mind. That doesn't work.
what I would say is sort of mullet. I think continuity is really helpful, but also with the 5-member board and competing priorities, I think getting the regs in is also important. And so I think we've got some good steps. I might suggest if we find that we can't move forward with our current plans, that we pivot a little bit on the goal of having all 5 present for at least these working group discussions. And Ellen, if there was let's imagine we had a meeting where we had somebody who couldn't be present. If they provided edits to you or comments to you, those were then shared at a public meeting. that would be okay with the open meeting law, because it would still be publicly closed.
Yeah.
And so I think I like our goal of all being there and all talking, but if that proves to be rate limiting, that might be another strategy when we get to the sort of editing language phase to pull those comments in for at least the remaining group to work on if we're running into a hard time having all 5.
And then I think as long as we have a meeting all together before we issue whatever gets put in the paper as our final, that I think would be important to have everyone present so that everyone could make their comments.
That sounds great. All right. Can I, Ellen, you think that after like months I'd have it, but maybe you wouldn't think. Do I now make a motion to close our meeting?
Yes.
Perfect.
Then there's a roll call to.
So did you want to circle back to Rebecca's had a comment earlier?
Yeah,
that
thanks for the reminder. Thanks for the reminder, Daryl. And Rebecca, go ahead. I don't know if you want to revisit that topic when we ask you to put a pin in it.
I do. I think that the board needs guidance because are we making decisions based on current regulations and standards, or are we going back to things from 15 years ago? We need the town council to guide us because.
So I think to be clear though,
what's the legal responsibility of the Board of Health?
So I think it's a very broad question for. I think it's a very broad question for. Like I think what town council would say is you 100% need to operate with your current rules and regulations, and the ones that are active are the ones that are salient. For previous determinations by the board, I think they would also absolutely say that you need to treat the same property consistently. Let me just finish. And then if you have like properties, they needed to be treated consistently, because a failure to do so would be arbitrary and capricious. And so I think the question of should we follow rules and regulations and should we follow determinations from 15 years ago? I think the answer to both of those is yes. And I'm not sure there's a town council question there.
So the reason that I'm asking is that in other circumstances, when homeowners upgraded from a cesspool to a modern system, we unhesitatingly gave variances because they were making it better.
Totally, and that was those were local variances, not Title V variances.
Right, that's a big difference.
So why don't we consult with Rodine, whatever the name of the woman is at the DEP? What do they think? Just for future reference.
Mark can fill you in on what the DEP has to say about that, because he did confirm.
Well, I would also say I want to be really clear about this, because even if they say you can grant Title V variances, we have repeatedly asserted as a board, and I personally genuinely believe that Title V is defining the minimum standard, and that we have specific features related to Sherborn and the dependence on well and septic that say, God, if you're saying, no, we're actually totally fine going below Title V, that to me feels wildly inconsistent with saying, we don't feel that Title V provides adequate protection. Like, how on earth could you justify that?
Yeah, it would unravel basically our more stringent regulations, which I think several of us, including you, Rebecca, right, have supported that we need to be at least as conservative and in fact more stringent than the default Title V because of the sensitivity of us all depending on one aquifer together for both septic and for potable water supply. So I do agree. I think it's kind of a no-brainer that Title V is the minimum standard. And if they weren't asking for variances to Title V, I think this would be a very different conversation.
And actually, we've had lots of votes in the last few years, Rebecca, where we have, because we've given variances to Title V, we have noted that they do not get the +1, and they shall never, until they can meet current regulations, that they can't expand. We've often said that.
I understand. My question is different because this is a homeowner who's offering to pay out of pocket to increase his septic capacity, which is better for all the considerations that Title V was, for which Title V was.
No, but with variance,
not,
Rebecca,
what,
it's not that.
and I would say it may not, I don't think you can say it would be better with an increase in design flow. So if in fact but that's the whole point, Rebecca, is that I think the other 4 members of the board said there was an increase in design flow. If there was no increase, if there was no.
I respect your view. I totally get it. But we also know that this house, unfortunately, is defined by the state and local regulations as a 4-bedroom house.
That is not.
Except it's not actually defined by the local regulations as a 4-bedroom house.
Right. The local regulations would call it a 3-bedroom house because if those were second floor rooms, then I think we would have called it a 4-bedroom house. They're first floor rooms, and so it's a 3-bedroom house. By room count, it is fewer than 8, so we wouldn't call it a 4-bedroom house. And the assessors absolutely are not what determine the bedroom count. The assessors are what we turn to when there's an absence of a defined design flow to say, what is the historical properties of this house? So that we have a way to consistently treat the cesspool. In this case, at least my opinion, which I respect, that yours may be different, is that when the Board of Health acted on a plan that listed 3 bedrooms and approved a building permit, that then supplants the preceding assessor's records and renders moot the future assessor's records because the board itself has reached a conclusion and acted on that belief.
So I think I just want to say I'm a little concerned. I don't want to go too much into the details of this particular case again, because we sort of closed the hearing and people aren't here. I think if there's a specific narrow question for town council, Rebecca, that you want to ask, we could discuss that. But I don't know that I want to go into the details of this one.
I think great point, Matt. Thank you.
I don't have an opinion. I'm interested in hearing what they have to say just to learn for future reference.
But I get the question is, what is the question for them? What is the question for town council?
You know my question. I don't really need. Let's just. Well,
maybe I just missed it. So I was just asking you to state the question.
I already said my opinion, and you've objected multiple times with the same argument. And there have been multiple. What we're talking about is improving from going from a cesspool to a modern system. In which case, in other circumstances, we have given variances, and I'm interested in their perspective. That's all I'm interested in, just getting educated.
I guess I just don't understand what question we're asking. We're asking, I'm not objecting to your question, Rebecca. I just want to understand what question we're asking. Are we asking them, are we allowed to grant waivers to Title V? Are we asking them, like, how do we define bedrooms? Like, what are we asking them?
Yeah, how the waivers to Title V, that could be the perspective that they have to give on private wells, the impact on private wells of going from a cesspool to a modern system, where it is, when we're talking about the town determined that this is a 3-bedroom house. We gave a deed recording, we don't want to increase in design flow. However, this individual, apparently, I
think we don't want to go this individual. That's what Matt just made the point, which I think is appropriate, is if our question is about general policy, that's appropriate. If it's about, this very specific scenario, I think that's sort of separate. So
I don't care about the specific scenario. I'm talking about in general. If we have,
it sounds like I just trying to state the question. It sounds like your question in general is, what does town council think about increasing design flow?
No, because no, that's not what I said at all. What does the DEP tell us? DEP, who is familiar with state regulations, we have a determination that the Board of Health made 15 years ago that we want to be consistent with, right? We don't want any increase in design flow. However, apparently, there are some definitions that allowed this individual to think a 4-bedroom septic system was indicated. And in this case, the person wants to pay out of pocket. Usually they want us to not make them upgrade to the 4-bedroom system. Should we be saying, I'm just saying, I would love to.
You're mixing and matching.
I'm sorry, I don't think there's a clear, coherent question here. I would say if we want to ask for town council to opinionate on the deed recording, I'd be open to that. Again, I feel comfortable with the interpretation. I don't like it. I think it's been asked to be restated. The question at least doesn't make sense to me, so I don't want to move it to town council because I'm still
No,
not.
forget town council. Why don't we just ask, the DEP
Well-
if they have.
All right, I have
thoughts
an
about
answer for that.
Yeah.
If you look in the documents that we received for tonight's meeting, one of the documents is called DEP Policy Guidance 10-12-01, so October 12th, 2001. We refer to that a lot. The DEP and what the rules are for replacing, repairing, and upgrading systems is not tied to whether it's voluntary or not. It's tied to other specifications. And that policy walks through the different scenarios. We've, over and over and over, we refer to it. So part of the answer lies in that. And then part of it, again, Mark reached out to Claire Golden about the issue of that we're dealing with this evening, but
That's right.
and it was the
There-
guidance. Yeah, take it
And I
away,
think,
Mark.
and,
Yeah,
and
no,
I
I was
just
just-
again, I want to just reframe this. This
Yes,
is the
not
general guidance
talking,
about
yes, general.
how do we think about the assessor's records or
Sure.
changes in assessment as it relates to bedroom count?
And I'll keep it general guidance. Claire said that DEP is the determining body and the Board of Health because we represent DEP in respect to bedroom count.
And so it's really that the assessors, not the determinant.
That is correct. The only time you would go to the assessors if there was no determination by DEP or the Board of Health. DEP is the governing body for bedroom count based on Title V.
Okay. And so
And what about in the case where the previous evaluation didn't have a number of bedrooms
no, that's
identified?
so I think that's the scenarios listed in that reference that Daryl shared are all ones where there's a design flow. I suspect you'll recall we've had a bunch of properties where we've had cesspools that then need to be replaced, and then we've looked to those records, and the assessor's records are what we've used. And for this house, for 30 years, the assessor's record said it was a 3-bedroom, and in 2022 they said no, I think it should have been 4. Well, that's again, you can update that assessment, but it doesn't change the historical fact that those records were actually for a 3-bedroom, or the historical assessor's records. I think that's rendered moot when the board renders a decision on a property in question. So if the board said, hey, this is a house on Bullard Street, it's got this many rooms, this was the maid's quarters, this was that. Once the board reaches a determination, I think that's a plans and you need to reference the historical record. And so the assessor's materials becomes moot, and that reverts to that determination by the board. So I'm not hearing a question that I at least feel like I can communicate to town council. And so.
Okay,
Yeah.
didn't you just say that the assessor is the one who changed the number of bedrooms?
No, I said the assessors changed their assessment. So they've changed their assessment. They certainly can do that. It doesn't change the determination of a previous board. And the assessment is only pertinent if there's no other information about that property. So if an assessment, for example, had a design flow that was listed that said this is 500 gallons per day of design flow, the assessment record could say it's a 7-bedroom house. That wouldn't change that actually they had 500 gallons per day and they're not entitled to a 7-bedroom house. So the assessor's records are only when you say there's no prior determination, there's no nothing. What are the things one could reference to try to, kind of define how many rooms were there and what the sort of historical pattern was.
The sticky point for me is that the cesspool didn't have a design flow attached to it. So although it's true that at one time they said removal, Board of Health,
and I don't
moved the
think-
drop bedroom, we're caught a 3-bedroom.
We
Um,
need to, we should not be
We cannot
discussing
talk
this.
about this.
Yeah, we
So,
can't. We
so,
can't.
so I think we need to be, Rebecca, I definitely hear it. If you have a different version of the question, let's plan to discuss it at the next meeting. I honestly don't hear a question that I can articulate to town council from what you're saying. And so again, I know it's not,
I'll just go deep. I'll talk to Mark and I'll talk to DEP and I'll just get educated myself. I mean, it doesn't matter.
okay. Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
Hearing no further discussion?
Daryl, I.
Matt Beaver's eye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye. Have a good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.